Speaker 1, Cyril Jr. Dim, The Power of Silence. The Power of Silence, Cyril Jr. Dim.
Polska dla Polaków. Polska dla Polaków. Polska dla Polaków. Two men standing across the street, yelling at me, a foreigner who just wanted to catch his bus. Poland is for Poles. Now, if anybody ever told you that Cyril Jr. Dim is afraid of a fight, they wouldn't be lying. Mr. Contest Chair, friends, I was terrified. The bus suddenly decided to run late, as if to give these men enough time to effectively communicate their message. The people around me remained silent, as if they agreed with these men. I stood there, silent too. Minutes went by, and the situation, it only got worse. These two men, they decided to cross the street. Now, I'm no stranger to a fight, and my mama knows about each and every fight I've ever been involved in. Sometimes after a fight, she would say, "You should have hit him harder." Most of the times, my mother would say, "Eish, why didn't you run away? Don't you have legs?" But every time, Mama would say to me, "It's okay to walk away. Just say nothing." You see, my mama is no stranger to the power of silence, because she herself was in a big fight not so long ago against me. I was a teenager at the peak of my identity crisis. I hated rules. I just wanted to do things my way. But I have an African mother. You see, she can slap you with her hand and her tongue. And if I'm being honest, I was no stranger to either. But I was like a sponge. The more you punished me, the more I learned to soak it up. One night I went partying and lost all track of time. Coming home after midnight, I had to sneak into the house. Guess who was waiting for me at the front door? Mama. I was ready for both hands, for the tongue lashing of my life. But something stopped Mama. A voice of reason. I now know that that was the voice of her father, my grandfather. You see, my grandfather is no stranger to the power of silence, because he was in the largest fight of all, a fight for his life. In colonial Zimbabwe, racism was the way of the day, and my grandfather's boss was the worst of them all. One day, during his lunch break, my grandfather walked into the kitchen to make himself some lunch. He took a few slices of bread, but made the mistake of putting butter on them. The boss walked in, and he could not contain his fury. This animal was eating bread with butter. So he kicked him. And he kicked him again. And he kicked him again. I need to tell you that my grandfather is no small man, and yet he never retaliated. In fact, he went back to work the day after that, and the day after that, and every day after that. I couldn't understand it, so I asked, "Grandpa, why didn't you fight back?" My grandfather explained it to me this way: by remaining silent when provoked, I chose to fight a different way. I chose to fight for my family, for their house, for our future. Grandpa kept his job. He raised 6 amazing children and my mother. Today he lives with his wife of many years, the love of his life, my grandmother, close to the beach in Miami. And what happened to this boss? Nobody knows. Down to this day, we don't even know his name. Mama knew this story, and in that moment, I was that boss, kicking my own mother over and over again because I wanted to do things my way. So for what felt like an eternity, Mama looked me dead in the eye and said nothing. I felt so small, shamed without a single word. So standing at that bus stop that day, I had 3 generations of training. And while my silence may have looked like weakness, it spoke. Do you know how I know this? Because as these 2 men approached, the people around me, countrymen to them, but strangers to me, lined up in front of me to protect me. They stood there until my bus arrived. I share this story not just because it happened to me, but because it represents what happens in each and every one of our lives. Sometimes we're provoked by people who know no better. Choose silence. Sometimes we want to prove a point. Choose silence. Sometimes we have to choose between revenge now and the last laugh tomorrow. Choose silence. In the words of a wise man, silence is the ultimate weapon of power. Yes, there is a time to stand up for yourself. There is a time to stand up for others. But there is also a time to fight a different way, to put down the fists, to hold back the sharp words. There is power in silence.